Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
Haven't done one of these in a while. Congressman Tom Reed weekly press call, where we just play back the media call that Congressman Tom Reed does with reporters. This one is from yesterday morning. Congressman Reed starts out his opening statements talking about legislation coming out of Albany.
This week, I wanted to highlight our opposition to the extreme agenda coming out of Albany again. If you recall, a few months back, I stated our opposition to the granting of driver license to illegal immigrants. And to see the extreme liberal agenda out of Albany follow through on their threat to give licenses to illegal immigrants is to me dangerous and just representative of that extreme agenda that puts people at risk coming out of Albany. When you look at what they're authorizing, one, to give those who violated the law in coming to New York State preference over those who followed the law is just not fair. It just fundamentally goes against the question of fairness and the question of treating those that came to New York legally and followed the rules in a place of disrespect. And also, there are serious security issues associated with this. You know, take the simple issue of relying upon foreign licenses from countries that now clerks are supposed to be able to recognize their citizenship, or I'm sorry, strike that, their documentation when it comes to prior driver licenses and things like that. You know, what about an individual who's got a history of drunk driving in these foreign countries? How is a clerk supposed to know that this individual has that type of driving record that could put fellow citizens and people of New York State at risk on the road? That to me is a very dangerous risk that has been underestimated by those who are supporting it. And for example, when you go to the airport, I know the law tries to address that these illegal immigrant licenses should not be utilized in order to get on airplanes. But I will tell you, the TSA officials are stressed at this point of security. You know, we've seen reports where weapons have made their way onto airlines, onto planes, and now you've got individuals that are going to be presenting what appears to be government-issued licenses by folks who have no security background checks or potentially have gone through the system of citizenship where those security risks are identified and taken care of. And so I think at its surface, you have some very serious risks to the security of our traveling public, as well as those potentially traveling outside of New York when it comes to our airlines and elsewhere. I recognize that we need to fix our immigration system. That's why I've been a loud voice to try to come up with a solution where Democrats and Republicans set aside partisan politics and solve this immigration issue. But just by fiat out of the extreme liberal agenda of Albany, to try to say we're going to fix it by giving driver's licenses to illegal immigrants is, to me, just not dealing with the root cause of the problem. It's just putting a Band-Aid on the situation to pacify an extreme voice that has overtaken the Democratic Party as represented by the one-party rule of Albany. So that being said, I hope none of our concerns about these security issues come to reality, but I'm sad to say that when they do, I will be the first ones to hold accountable that extreme liberal agenda out of Albany that has put those individuals at a safety risk. And God forbid, but what I foresee is we're going to be holding the hands of folks that are going to be the victims of this risk to our fellow citizens as represented by this extreme policy. That is my comments on the issue this week, and let's open it up to questions.
First question for Congressman Reed was a question about LBGTQ issues. This is from a reporter named Matt Hubble. Not familiar with him.
Congressman, how are you?
Doing well, Matt. How you doing?
Not too bad, thank you. I wanted to get your thoughts. Just scrolling here on social media right now, I see that the House passed last night an amendment to block President Trump's transgender ban from remaining in effect, and I wanted to see if you were involved in that vote, what way you went, and why.
Well, my record is clear when it comes to the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender issues. I do not support discrimination, and my vote last night was consistent with that position. Obviously, I understand the concern that has been expressed to make sure that military participants meet the physical standards that are required to make sure that our men and women can defend our country and do the job as safely as possible so they return to their families. But at the same time, just because of one's sexual orientation, I do not believe disqualifies them from serving in the military. So our vote last night was a continuation of our consistent position on this, and we will see how this unfolds as it goes through the process.
All righty, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Playing back the Congressman Tom Reed weekly press call. He has them every week. We don't do these every week, though they are very interesting. Next question came from Lucas Day. He's a Finger Lakes area reporter. He wanted to ask Congressman Reed some questions about President Trump's rally in Orlando, Florida.
Hi, Congressman. How are you?
Doing well, Lucas. How you doing?
I'm not bad, thank you. Just wanted to get your reaction to the president's speech last night and announcing that he, of course, is going to be running again for president. Anything stand out to you during his speech last night?
Well, I was obviously voting, so I missed the actual speech play-by-play. But I will say the president has delivered on his campaign promises. We got the economy humming. You see the challenge to our trade policies that are rightfully necessary in order to hold accountable countries like China. And I think the president is positioning himself very well to be in a position to achieve re-election. Now, obviously, it's up to the people, and that's what democracy is all about. And let's see how the campaign unfolds, and let's see what this election results in regards to a choice. Remember, it's not necessarily a referendum. It is a choice between two candidates, so I look forward to seeing who the Democratic candidate is at the end of their process in regards to set up that choice between the two.
When you see an event like last night, like with the president, where people are lined up, 20,000 people in the arena, and then people lined up for more than a day to get inside, and then we see poll numbers that say that he's down to, let's say, Joe Biden by 9 or 10%. The poll numbers, the politicians, they really pay attention to those poll numbers. It seems like over the last couple of years, a lot of the polls have been kind of proven wrong at the end.
Yeah, obviously polls are a piece of data that you take into consideration, but you don't, in my opinion, I don't allow them to dictate what you do in regards to how you represent people or how you present your contrast with that choice in an election. And so I think reliance on any polls today to say, the re-election of President Trump is obviously not going to happen because the polls say X, Y, Z. Did you see in the prior elections? Polls were routinely cited as saying President Trump had no chance to be president of the United States, and yet here he is, the president of the free world. And I would just tell you, these polls, I think, are reflective of kind of where we are at as a country. We're polarized. We are going to see an electorate in 2020 that is energized, in my opinion, and that's going to be on both sides of the equation. And the more energy we bring into a democracy, the stronger we are. And so I encourage that and support that type of engagement of American voters.
Great. Thank you, Congressman.
Yeah, thanks, Lucas.
Next up is a Dunkirk reporter. His name is Dave Raleigh. He works at WDOE in Dunkirk, Fredonia. I used to work with him. We used to share his stories during the Ralph Bucky Phillips search, if you can remember that. What was that, the summer of 2006? Anyways, this is Dave Raleigh.
Hi, Tom. How are you today?
Doing well, Dave. How you doing?
Pretty good. It actually feels like summer outside.
I hear you. Weekend was a little wet and cold, but it was good to be at the Greek Festival the other day, and that was a great turnout of people in the local community there in Jamestown.
Wanted to get your thoughts. Your fellow Western New York Congressman Brian Higgins today coming out in a tweet saying that he feels it's time for the House to launch an impeachment inquiry. What are your thoughts on this? And a colleague of yours in Western New York, a Democrat, calling for this.
Well, I'll let Brian answer for himself in regards to his position on impeachment. Obviously, I don't support impeachment. I don't see the grounds for impeachment, and nor do I think turning over a duly held election that the voice of the people brought President Trump into the office is the right thing to do. That being said, that's their prerogative, especially the new House majority. If they want to use their time and they think the people of America are demanding that impeachment be the process they should pursue with the legislative agenda and the legislative time they have, that's their prerogative. But I think what the American people want us to do is, not get bogged down into this partisan bickering based on impeachment investigation endlessly. They want solutions to their day-to-day problems, and that's what I'm trying to be a voice of. And I would encourage all my colleagues, and I know Brian, wants to solve problems. I've worked with him over the years, and so obviously I disagree with him on the impeachment stance, but that doesn't mean we'll not look for areas where we can come to agreement and try to solve things that are going to impact people on a positive basis day to day.
And do you think there are enough votes at this point or support for a call for an inquiry?
I don't see that. Now, obviously, impeachment, and then at the end of the day, what the Senate does is pretty clear that a successful outcome there is highly unlikely. So, it's about do you heed the call of that extremist type of portion of the Democratic Party that represents the Democratic Party today that is not the Democratic Party of our grandma and grandpas? Or do you stand up to it and you try to lead and try to find common ground so they can solve people's problems on a day-to-day basis? I choose to engage in the latter. I choose to open the door, stay in the room, and do the work for the people rather than engage in political headlines or partisan politics, because to me it's just not productive time that will result in anything that's going to impact people's lives in a positive way.
Okay, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Going to take a quick break on the Newsmaker show. It's Brian O'Neill playing back the Congressman Tom Reed weekly press call from yesterday. When we get back, Terry Frank, a Jamestown area radio reporter, will ask Congressman Tom Reed some questions about the driver's license legislation that was just passed in Albany. Stay with us.
Parents, please do your part this graduation season and be a smart host by having an alcohol-free graduation party for your graduate. Celebrate their accomplishments without risking legal consequences or worse. Graduation parties are a great time to set the example that you can have fun without including alcohol. This is Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard reminding you to celebrate safe and celebrate sober this graduation season. This message is brought to you by the Steuben Council on Addictions and the offices of the Steuben County Sheriff and the Steuben County District Attorney.
Time to check in with meteorologist Rob Carolyn. Rob, you continue to say it's going to be a nice weekend.
I do, and I believe it, Brian. I actually think it's going to happen. That'll be the second one in 3 weeks that ends up being pretty nice across the southern tier. Nice, not a word we'd use to describe today's weather, though. We've got a soggy day shaping up. Brian, we've got an area of low pressure pushing out of the Ohio River Valley. It's been responsible for the rain we've already seen this morning, and the rain will continue to fall today. Temperatures near 70. Take it slow on the roads, folks. You do need to be concerned about hydroplaning because we may have some puddles on those roads by this afternoon. Sunrise this morning was at 5:33. Sunset tonight at 8:50. Again, longest days of the year are currently taking place as we head towards the summer solstice tomorrow. The rain tapers off and ends tonight. Lows will be near 55. Turns much nicer tomorrow. We say goodbye to spring, astronomically speaking, and hello to summer. Turning partly sunny, breezy, 70 to 75. The outlook for tomorrow night, clear and cool, 50 to 55. Saturday, outstanding, lots of sunshine, 70 to 75. And we're partly sunny on Sunday. May see a shower or a thunderstorm late in the day, Brian.
Back with the Congressman Tom Reed weekly press call from yesterday. And Terry Frank, the Jamestown area, a radio reporter, has a question about illegals getting driver's licenses.
I wanted to go back to your initial comments about the undocumented aliens being able to obtain driver's licenses in New York. You mentioned it's part of an extreme liberal agenda, yet the Business Council of New York State, which has hardly been a bastion of liberalism, has supported this. I wanted to get your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think a little bit of that influence of the extremism out of Albany is seeping in to their agenda, but I also do recognize that the need for workers is causing some of these organizations to support some of these extreme positions in order so that their members have access to workers. It is a good problem, in my opinion, to have the issue of shortage of workers, because that means we can solve it by fixing our immigration system, empowering through skills training and other opportunities those workers that are needed in today's economy. And to me, that is a positive agenda that I can support. But just to say we're going to allow illegal immigrants to have access to a license, so in order that they can somehow be in a position to work for our local employers, I think that's really the motivation of the position. And to me, that's not solving the problem. That's just putting a Band-Aid on the issue and not dealing with the issue long term.
On a different topic, we saw yesterday that acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan stepped down because of the painful family situation that he had. And Army Secretary Mark Esper will be acting Pentagon chief. I wanted to get your thoughts about this change, and the change coming at a very volatile time right now, especially in the Middle East with Iran.
Well, the one thing that gives me comfort is the U.S. military has a rich legacy and a deep foundation of leaders that can step forward at a moment's notice. And so the transition or the change at the top of the Defense Department is something, that will let the process bear its way out. But I am confident in the men and women that serve in the U.S. military, that the Secretary of Army, as well as others who will likely be in consideration, will step up to the challenge and will lead and be firm in their policies and positions and advice to the president that will make sure that America's interests are protected.
All right. Thank you, Tom.
Yep. Thanks, Terry.
Next up, Jerry Zaremski of the Buffalo News, who had another question about what Brian Higgins, the Buffalo congressman, said about impeachment.
Hey, Tom. How you doing?
Doing well, Jerry.
Good. I wanted to follow up with another question about what Brian Higgins had to say about impeachment. His argument is that by ignoring the subpoenas that the House committees have issued for information and for witnesses, that President Trump is committing obstruction of justice there and then. And this seems to have been kind of what's pushed Brian over the edge to supporting impeachment. What would you say about his particular thought that the president is obstructing justice by refusing to respond to these subpoenas?
Well, obviously the subpoenas are issued by Congress for their oversight role, and I would point to the thousands of hours and the significant amount of documentation that the administration has complied with in providing information to Congress. And I will say that this is an extension of the long debate of separation of powers between the executive branch and Congress when it comes to each being an independent body. Many of these issues are probably going to have to be litigated, and that's where the judicial branch comes into the equation. And then also, we'll see how they negotiate between the executive branch and the legislative branch. If you watch the judiciary with Jerry Nadler's negotiations last week, there can be productive conversations where Congress gets access to legitimately what is Congress's right to see as part of its oversight responsibilities, but at the same time respect the sanctity of the executive branch when it comes to their independence and ability to have advisors and executive privilege and issues like that. So, where I see the difference with Brian, I don't see obstruction of justice per se by these congressional oversight issues that are being raised. And I think it is clear that with the report that Mueller has done, if we're talking about obstruction of justice as indicated there, I've read that report and I've come to the conclusion that there was no conclusion and there was no obstruction, and therefore we should do the people's work rather than engage in these lengthy debates over partisan politics that drives a lot of the impeachment talk as I see it from my perspective.
Do you think the administration should be more forthcoming with information, and should some of these witnesses be allowed to testify?
Yeah, there's been thousands of hours and hundreds of documents and resources put to this. I think the more that the executive branch and the congressional branch can work out its differences, as you saw with Jerry Nadler last week, that is a positive relationship, and that is something that I would encourage be promoted. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that you're just going to overrun one branch from the other. And that's where this is that delicate issue that's been around since I've been here. President Obama and us in the Republican Party have had these disputes and these debates before. And sad to say, but probably realistic, that there will be future presidents and Congresses that lock horns on these issues. But at the end of the day, I'm confident that our congressional oversight, both in the House and Senate, are doing its job, and that it will continue to push forward. And clearly in the House, they're going to push for more each and every day. And I don't think there's going to be a satisfaction in the House until there's impeachment that occurs on the floor.
Okay. Thank you much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, that wraps it up.
All right, guys, I have to go back to the trade ambassador, but just appreciate your time and patience today, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
So another weekly press call there with Corning Republican Congressman Tom Reed. I kind of like doing these. It's interesting to hear all the different reporters, all their viewpoints, and instead of having just one host, you get a dozen or two. So I think it's kind of nice. The Congressman Tom Reed Weekly Press Call was today's Newsmaker show here on AM 1480 WLEA Hornell. Brian Kilmeade's next.